Welcome to the political safari, where cold-blooded creatures roam free, feasting on taxpayer dollars, dodging accountability, and camouflaging corruption better than a chameleon in the tall grass. Today, we're trekking deep into the Senate exhibit, a political jungle where predators and prey battle for survival. And right there, basking in the murky waters of Washington's deepest swamp, is one of the slowest, oldest, and most resilient creatures we've ever documented. Just look at that absolute unit of a swamp beast, right there, in his natural habitat, the Senate floor. That, my friends, is Mitch McConnell, the swamp turtle. This reptile has been blocking legislation longer than most of us have been alive. And if you get too close, he won't bite. But he'll definitely take millions in corporate donations and make sure your healthcare costs triple. If Congress were a safari, old Mitch wouldn't be the majestic lion or even the cunning crocodile. No, he'd be that grumpy old tortoise near the watering hole, refusing to move, sitting motionless, yet somehow controlling the entire ecosystem. His approval rating? Lower than a mosquito's lifespan during dry season. Even his own party treats him like a wounded elephant, too big to remove, but slowing everything down. But here's the thing, this turtle, he isn't just basking in the sun, he's quietly hoarding resources, gathering corporate sponsors, and ensuring the gates to progress remain locked tighter than a lion's jaws. So, how deep does this swamp go? Well, let's track this ancient beast through the underbrush and measure just how deep his footprints sink into the political mud. We're running old Mitch through the swamp score, a test designed to measure just how compromised a politician is, like a conservationist tagging a rhinoceros, only to find out it's already chipped by big oil. We'll rank him across 4 critical corruption categories. First up, the Bribe-O-Meter, because no swamp creature survives without deep-pocketed sponsors. So, what's Mitch McConnell's official salary as a senator? $174,000 a year. His net worth? Over $30 million. For God's sake, I didn't know tortoises could do bank fraud. But here we are. Either this old reptile has discovered a hidden oasis of gold inside his shell, or he's got some very wealthy poachers funding his survival.
So, my warning, if you will, to corporate America is to stay out of politics. It's not what you're designed for. I'm not talking about political contributions. Most of them contribute to both sides. They have political action committees. That's fine. It's legal. It's appropriate. I support that.
And who's feeding this turtle? Oh, just a few struggling species like Blackstone Group, the vultures of private equity, Humana Incorporated, where healthcare profits matter more than human lives, and of course, Goldman Sachs, the apex predators of Wall Street. Basically, the kind-hearted villagers of unchecked capitalism on the wild plains of America. His final score on the Bribe-O-Meter, 9 out of 10, making that money printer go brrr. Next up, let's measure McConnell's backbone with the political spine density test. Because in the wild, only the strong survive. But in Washington, it's all about knowing when to roll onto your back and play dead. McConnell is a master of political camouflage. He shifts colors and patterns, depending on which predator is nearby. He vowed to fight Big Pharma, promised to lower prescription drug prices.
I think everybody agrees that prescription drug prices are too high. The dilemma is, how do you get there? And we have divisions within the Republican Party on that and with the Democrats on that. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about it, whether we can all pull together and get a solution.
Then, he blocked a bill that would have capped insulin at $35. He called Trump a threat to democracy after January 6th.
That President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. Last time the Senate convened, we had just reclaimed the Capitol from violent criminals who tried to stop Congress from doing our duty. The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people. And they tried to use fear and violence to stop a specific proceeding of the first branch of the federal government, which they did not like.
Then, when the winds shifted, he backed him for president.
You've endorsed him for re-election.
The voters of my party across the country have made a decision. As the Republican leader of the Senate, obviously, I'm going to support the nominee of our party.
He promised to protect Kentucky coal miners.
A war on coal is a war on all of Kentucky. Without coal, America would be in the dark. And we're not going to let that happen. Under this administration, there won't be another coal-fired generation plant built in America if we don't stop them. And I'm here to tell you this fight has just begun. We're not giving up. We're going to push back against these people in every single way we can. We're going to stop this war on coal.
But when they needed health care after developing black lung disease,
coal miners in eastern Kentucky are camped out on the train tracks tonight. They are hoping to be paid wages that they are still owed.
To get off these tracks today is for the company to contact each and every one of the miners for the whole entire company and say your money will be handed back to you within whatever amount of days. But if we can be guaranteed that our money is handed back to us, we can leave these tracks.
he stood with the coal companies instead. When it comes to standing for actual principles, McConnell folds faster than a gazelle that wandered into a lion's den. His final score on the political spine density test? 10 out of 10, because you can't lose a spine if you never had one.
We'd fill it.
Now, let's examine how McConnell actually impacts the ecosystem. That brings us to the Legislative Bootlicker Index, a measure of just how much his policies serve donors over voters. In the animal kingdom, creatures adapt to survive, but in politics, they simply serve the biggest predator in the food chain. McConnell has one job, and that's to block anything that doesn't benefit his wealthy donors. Here's just a short list of what he's hunted down and killed. Blocking minimum wage increases.
The CBO indicated we would lose from 500,000 to 1 million jobs with the minimum wage increase our friends on the other side are recommending. You couple that with CBO's estimate of 2.3 million fewer jobs created under Obamacare, and you've got a pretty big hit on an economy that is already suffering from way too much joblessness. The last thing we need to be doing right now in our country is passing legislation that destroys even more jobs.
Voting against paid sick leave for workers. Killing an anti-corruption bill that would limit lobbying.
Sadly, it's now come to the point where you can set your clock to the Democrats' attempt to stifle the free speech rights of the American people. The entire premise for it is utterly baseless.
McConnell sees the bill as a violation of the First Amendment. Congressional Democrats, however, see the bill as a way to hold big donors accountable for secret spending and influencing voters.
Let me be blunt. This proposal is little more than a crude intimidation tactic masquerading as good government.
And opposing veteran health care expansion. Meanwhile, if billionaires need tax cuts or corporate monopolies need protection, McConnell is the first one at the watering hole, signing their deals under the shade of a baobab tree. His final score on the Legislative Bootlicker Index, 9.5 out of 10, because he's got more lobbyist loyalty points than a safari guide catering to billionaires. And finally, let's measure how fast McConnell abandons the very people who elected him. This is the public backstab barometer. Because in the wild, even the most trusted pack leader can turn on its own. when McConnell had the chance to support politicians who actually challenged the system. He voted against every single one of them. Tulsi, too anti-war. Mitch said no. Robert Kennedy Jr., too much of a threat to the system. Mitch said no.
We saw Robert F. Kennedy Jr. get confirmed. He's going to come in here and be sworn in. Mitch McConnell has now voted against several of your nominees. He voted against RFK Jr. as the next health secretary, citing conspiracy theories. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I feel sorry for Mitch. And I was one of the people that led. He wanted to go to the end and he wanted to stay leader. He's not equipped mentally. He wasn't equipped 10 years ago mentally, in my opinion.
Pete Hegseth, a veteran who questioned the establishment. Mitch said no.
We issued a statement, and you can read it.
Meanwhile, if it's a corrupt corporate-backed war-loving politician, McConnell's already rolling out the welcome mat like it's migration season. His final score on the public backstab barometer, 9.7 out of 10, because his loyalty to voters disappears faster than a water source in dry season. And now for the final verdict. Mitch McConnell's official swamp score, a 9.2 out of 10. McConnell's legacy, simple. He did nothing, he did it for profit, and he did it slowly. And before we go, let's take one last look at the majestic swamp turtle in action.
And a string of
absolutely breathtaking. And remember, the swamp never drains itself, but it sure does get deeper. So who should we rank next on the swamp score? Drop your requests in the comments, and we'll see which political safari beast we track next.